So,
There's a good chance.
Good afternoon. My name is Allison McKenzie, and I am the Chair of the Historic Conservation Board. I would like to take a minute to remind everyone about the rules of this proceeding. This proceeding is at all times governed by the rules of procedure adopted by the board on September 26, 2011, last amended on March 9, 2020. A copy of the rules of procedure is available for review in the back of the room and online. All those planning to testify today, which does not include those solely making arguments such as attorneys, should please stand now and take an oath administered by the board's attorney.
Raise your right hand. I'll need you to answer out loud. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
Thank you.
This is a quasi-judicial hearing. As such, the board reserves the right to deliberate in private. The Ohio rules of evidence do not apply to this hearing. However, professional rules of conduct do apply, and candor to the tribunal is required. The board members are citizen volunteers and are not paid for their service. They are treated as public officials under Ohio law. Any attempt to influence them, including but not limited to bribery, intimidation, retaliation, which may include contacting their employer in an attempt to exert influence, is punishable as a crime. All should be aware that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, before you begin your comments, please state your name and address for the record. With that said, let's proceed with the first item. Mr. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 1 is an application for zoning relief and a certificate of appropriateness for 1000 Main Street. This property is the Hamilton County Courthouse, and it is located in the Court Street Historic District. And the applicant plans on making security upgrades to the building, specifically on the east side of the property. There's an existing surface parking lot that apparently is unfenced, and the work that is proposed is going to take place within this parking lot area. You can see on the images on the screen, the parking lot is located on that east side of the building. It currently has about a 19-inch knee-wall surrounding the parking lot, and there are access control arms located at the entrance off Central Parkway and the exit off of Court Street. You can, on the image, it doesn't show the Hamilton County Justice Center, but it is located directly across Sycamore Street. The skywalk that is leading out of the courthouse here goes directly into the Justice Center. And the proposed security improvements are partially related to that location adjacent to the Justice Center. So on the site plan, you can see this is the existing layout of the building. This is the surface parking lot along Sycamore on the east. That knee wall runs along the entire perimeter of the parking lot. The arms are located here and here at the entry and exit points. And the applicant is proposing to keep the existing configuration of the parking lot, but include security enhancements that do include a 7.58 foot tall fence around the entire perimeter in the location of that current knee wall. Fence is proposed to be 100% opaque up to 6 feet, with the top 1.5 feet being a spear top fence to prevent scaling. Additionally, there is a guard booth that is proposed to be located at the entry that will take the place of the control arm. Guards will be stationed in this booth to allow people to enter and exit the parking lot. There is a large overhead gate that is proposed at the entry point that will replace the current control arm, and another gate matching that same size and style on the southern entry point. So there are several items of zoning relief related to this. That includes a locational variance for the guard booth. Because this property occupies the entire block, it is considered a double frontage lot with frontage on both Main Street and Sycamore Street. So it does not have a true rear yard, which is what necessitates the variance for the guard booth, because accessory structures are only permitted in the rear yard of the property. There's a dimensional variance of 50% to allow 100% opaque fencing in excess of the 50% limit. There is a dimensional variance of 8 feet to allow an entry gateway and an exit gateway 18 feet in height. in excess of the 10-foot limit, as well as an additional dimensional variance for a 16 feet in width for these gates in excess of the 10-foot limit. And then finally, the fence variance height for 1.58 feet to allow the fence to exceed 6 feet. So staff has been working with the applicants on this design. There were concerns initially about the ability to meet both the zoning code and the conservation guidelines. And the applicants have been working with staff to try to make some improvements to better align these features with the conservation guidelines. That includes on the gateways, adding a limestone veneer around the mechanical and support structure for the gate. This essentially goes over the existing metal paneling that would have otherwise been used for the gate. And additionally, on the guard booth that is located in the corner, they have included the ability to add limestone veneer to the front of this building, so it is not just the stark utilitarian structure. The gate itself, as well as the fence that surrounds the parking lot, will both be painted in a sand type color that will match the limestone cladding of the courthouse building. So it will make it somewhat less obtrusive on the streetscape. Staff would note that the exterior of the building, the most ornate features on the courthouse are located on the on the Main Street facade, as well as the Central Parkway facade. The 7.5-foot fence that will wrap around the parking lot is located on the edge of that historic district on one of the less elaborate facades of the building. So while it will block some views of the building from the streetscape, it will primarily be the lower portion of the courthouse where there is not as much ornamentation. And while this work would not necessarily be something that is appropriate for many of the buildings along Court Street, the Hamilton County Courthouse does have unique circumstances and uses in the building that necessitate these types of improvements. The opaque fence will limit views into this parking lot area, which is primarily utilized by elected officials and other employees of the courthouse that are often the subject of intimidation or other adverse things. So essentially, the screening will provide both privacy, and it is of bulletproof construction, so it will also provide security for these officials that are entering and exiting the building. The gatehouse that is located that will be located on the corner of the building will allow guards to be stationed in this area, giving them better views of the surrounding area, as well as operating the gate, which is intended to be a fast-acting open and close, so that if there are any security issues that are identified within or outside the courthouse, those gates can be quickly opened or closed to secure the area. So considering the use of this site as a courthouse, which has been in place since the earlier 1800s, staff would consider the work to be in the interest of historic preservation, as it does allow that unique use of the courthouse to continue operating in this area with increased security. The Court Street guidelines, while staff has concerns that it does not explicitly meet all of the required guidelines, staff would note that there is a section in the guidelines that does allow for the board to waive specific guidelines in the interest of providing negotiated solutions based on the specific issues of the site. Because of that clause in the guidelines, staff finds that the proposed work is substantially compliant with the conservation guidelines, and the zoning relief is appropriate as well. So with that being said, staff does recommend The board approved the locational variance for the guard booth in the front yard, approved the dimensional variance of 50% to allow 100% opaque fencing, approved the dimensional variance to allow an 18-foot tall entry and exit gateway, approved the dimensional variance to allow a 16-foot wide entry and exit gateway, and approved the dimensional variance of 1.58 feet to allow a 7.58-foot tall fence. Also recommends approval of the certificate of appropriateness for 1000 Main Street with the following conditions: that the building permit shall be issued within 2 years or the COA shall expire, with the finding that the property owner has demonstrated by credible evidence that the proposal substantially conforms to the applicable conservation guidelines. Based on the unique nature and circumstances of the site and the Court Street Conservation Guidelines allowance for the board to waive certain guidelines in the interest of a negotiated solution to the specific issues of the site.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. It looks like we have some applicants here. If you could identify yourself before adding whatever you'd like to tell us, please.
I'm Michael Murphy with Champlin Architecture, EOP Architects. We are the architect for the project. I'm a principal with that company.
And I am Tom Baradon, Chief Magistrate and Court Administrator for the Court of Common Pleas, which is 1000 Main Street.
The only thing that I just want to modify something slightly that was said. The fence itself is not bulletproof. The guard booth does have ballistic ratings, a ballistic rating associated with it. And we did confirm that the manufacturer will allow for the installation of the limestone panels while still maintaining the ballistics rating. That would be fully staffed by sheriff's deputies, and it was important to kind of maintain the safety of the sheriff's deputies. The opacity of the fence itself is partially to control visual contact, but to prevent the direct aiming of a pistol through the fence. So while it's not bulletproof, the fence itself does not have a ballistic rating. It is designed to mitigate the chance of aiming at an elected official if that were to come to pass.
Or reaching through to specifically aim, getting through part of the fence with a hand, which was the other concern that we had when we were reviewing the fence options for the parking lot.
Are there any questions for these applicants or staff?
I don't recall seeing details of the fence. Were they provided and I missed them, or elevations of it?
We do have elevations and we have details of the fence specifically. I have a copy of that here. I don't know if that was provided to you. I don't know if that's something.
In the application?
Oh, he's got it pulled up right here.
I didn't see it. Okay, thank you.
No, it's, we've gone through there and, sorry, I'm going to apologize, Madam Chairman, but going with Mr. Owens and talking about this when he brought up the Court Street conditions, about discussing the different plans and the different reasons that we needed the specific fencing that we had, as well as the specific gate. It was very ugly when we first started. I have to say, Mr. Owens worked very well with us to discuss the concerns that were under the code. And one of the reasons why we came up with the color, which you can see in some of the photos, is it does help it blend in much better. It's not a stark contrast. It would be if we used the industrial black. The sand color is much more matte.
Are you attempting to match it or complement it?
Complement it. Matching the building would be almost impossible at this point, just due to the weather, the years on it, the different way the sun hits it in different ways. Each side looks different a little bit depending if it's wet, dry, with the sun, clean, dirty, the way the sun's coming down. And we understand that. And we understand the historic nature of the building. We want to make sure that while we're protecting our judges, we're not disturbing the historic nature of it as little as possible as we can.
I understand the rationale for the opaqueness. Can you, and I apologize if this was in here and I missed it, can you explain the need for the height on the gate? Those are pretty large.
So can you go back to that plan that you had that showed the parking area? So the parking lot is divided, that whole parking area is divided kind of north-south. The double loaded side to the right is level, but the single loaded side to the left between the building and sort of that wall is sloped down, and it slopes down to a tunnel. There are dumpsters, there are service vehicles that have to get back in there. And those are served by the Rumpke trucks. There's a need to be able to get essentially a full-size ODOT compliant opening into the parking lot that can then come in from the north, down, do what's necessary, and then out through the south. There's no room to turn around. So the sizes of those gates was designed to accommodate the truck service that arrives at the building.
Besides the court, we also have the clerk of courts in there, which has been in the process of transferring documents from other locations for storage within the courthouse. And that has been from a full-sized, basically flatbed delivery truck with fully covered, which we need the large size so that they can actually enter the parking lot for that as well too.
Any other questions by the board? I do have some others signed up. I'm not sure if they're also applicants or if there's any member of the public here, but I can go through that list if there are no other pressing questions. Rika Thackers,
I don't need to speak.
Matthew Butts,
I don't need to speak.
John Rowan,
I don't need to speak.
thank you. Let's see. I think, Derek King.
I don't need to speak either.
I think that hit everyone. Was there anyone else who wanted to speak on this issue? Any additional questions or comments from the board? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve both the zoning relief and the certificate of appropriateness as laid out by staff.
Second. Mr. Zalesko?
Aye.
Mr. Robbins?
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
The chair also votes aye. Thank you to Mr. Owen for your findings that indicate that this is a very special exception. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for your time today.
Okay, item number 2.
Madam Chair. Item 2 is the continuance of the application for certificate of appropriateness and zoning relief at 1426 to 1450 Walnut Street. Property was originally heard by the board on February 24th, where it was continued in order to allow the board or the applicants to address certain concerns from the board. Those concerns primarily included concerns about the demolition of the rear 2/3 of 1440 Walnut, which is the former grammar building, the proposed setback and gated amenity area along the Liberty frontage, as well as the general height and scale of the building, specifically along Walnut Street, but also just in general overall. So the applicant has addressed each of the board's concerns in various ways. So as we discussed this in detail initially at the February meeting, I'm not going to go back over the entire application, but I am going to focus on the changes that were made to the plans. Starting with the demolition of the Grammars building. So the previous proposal had included the retention of the front third of the Grammars building, which included the historic bar and dining area, the leaded glass entry vestibule, and those other character defining features. The applicant has since revised the plan to also retain the rear portion of the Grammars building, which is the other portion that is more visible on the building. So they do plan on still demolishing the non-contributing features around the historic building, including the entry vestibule on the north, the CMU garage on the south, as well as the CMU infill in the courtyard building. So the front and the rear portions will remain fully intact. And then the center portion, because the addition is still planned, that will run through the backside of the historic buildings on the site. The existing building at Grammars with the brick bearing walls along those outer edges, which are former party walls, do not have the strength and stability to support the addition that's proposed above that. So the applicant is planning on demolishing those exterior walls as well as removing the roof and rebuilding those walls in modern construction that will have that strength that is needed in order to facilitate the addition that will run along through that center section of the Grammars building. So essentially, the front and the rear thirds of the building will be retained and the center section will be demolished, and these walls will be rebuilt in a similar configuration as they currently are, but they will now be interior walls serving the rest of the proposed development. As far as the setback and the interaction with Liberty Street, this has also been adjusted. The applicant has taken the massing of the building and added an extension that goes further to the north, closer to that Liberty Street frontage. So you can see on the image here, the image on the bottom was the original proposal with the building going straight across along that perpendicular lot line with a large amenity area, which was all fenced and gated along that corner wrapping around to Liberty Street. So the applicant has added an extension to the building that provides more articulation along the Liberty Street facade, but also brings that massing closer to that corner at Liberty and Walnut. This will be approximately a 30-foot extension that will bring it closer, reducing that proposed setback from the previous 51 feet approximately to what is now proposed around 22 feet. So it substantially reduces the proposed setback. In addition, it also has removed the fenced and gated area along this section on the bump out. The storefront will wrap around the corner so that it will be largely transparent glass throughout the majority of that Walnut Street frontage, as well as this portion of the building on Liberty Street. And the new plaza area will contain the entry to the building, which was relocated to add more interest and more activity on that Liberty Street frontage. The plaza area will not be fenced or gated. It will have a low knee wall and a bed at the corner, but this area will remain open for pedestrians and tenants of the building to utilize. The section along the rear will have fencing, and this does remain set back from the Liberty Street frontage, as this is intended to be all residential units. That setback from the busy street is desired, and the fencing will allow this area to have use for the tenants for a dog walk area, as well as general green space for them to utilize. So staff does feel that this redesign of the Liberty Street frontage does address the board's comments both on the setback and the interaction with Liberty Street, as well as helping to break up the massing along Liberty Street, which was previously a very long building in the same plane. Now it does have that articulation to the facade to provide that bump out and break up that massing further. And additionally, with the reconfiguration of that Liberty Street frontage with that facade being bumped out, the applicant was able to push that 5-story massing closer to the corner, which allowed them to have more of a transition between the 3-story historic buildings that are adjacent to the building, adding a 4-story kind of hyphen addition between the larger Liberty Street massing and the lower massing of the historic buildings and that new infill portion further down the street. So staff feels that this is a very good change for this building. It reduces that sort of stark height difference between the Grammars building and the Liberty block to more of a step up as it approaches Liberty Street. So the massing along Liberty Street we've discussed previously. There are no existing buildings for context along this block face, and there are other existing 4- and 5-story buildings in close proximity across the street on Liberty as well as on the adjacent blocks. So providing that transition with the step up from 3 to 4 to 5 stories improves the Walnut Street facade as well as improving the Liberty Street facade. So staff feels that this is a very good change that does also go a long way towards addressing those comments with concerns on the height and the massing related to the building. Otherwise, you see, I'll share some of the renderings that were provided by the applicant. So you can see that transparent glazing wrapping the corner from Walnut along to Liberty Street, with the main entry now facing Liberty Street. So it provides additional interest and activity to that street corner, as well as reducing the overall massing along Liberty Street just by breaking that building up into different planes along the street frontage. With the changes that were required to meet these alterations to the project, it did add substantial cost to the project of approximately $3 million. In order to help offset those costs, there were 10 additional residential units that were added to the project. So it now has a total of 126 units. Only 1 parking space was lost based on the reconfiguration and the retention of the rear Grammars building. So the other major change to the design includes the existing historic building at the southern edge of the development. This is currently a bad infill on the storefront. It's almost entirely brick with few openings. The applicant had previously proposed converting this back into a commercial storefront with transparent glazing, but with adding the additional residential units, this was the most appropriate place to add some of those units. So instead of having the commercial storefront in this area, there is a more residential storefront or residential base section on this building. However, it does continue the existing rhythm of the buildings. It provides a substantial amount of openings and has the darker brick color that helps sort of simulate a more traditional commercial storefront. So all in all, staff feels that the applicant has appropriately and adequately addressed the concerns that were previously brought forward by the board members as well as surrounding property owners. And does feel that the project has been improved based on these changes. And I would also note the former parties in opposition to the project from the Open Rhine Foundation have submitted an updated letter that was included in the packet where they no longer urge denial of the project, but they have submitted a letter of no opposition. They do still have some concerns with the design, but their overall stance is no opposition to the project. So with that all being said, staff recommends the board take the following actions based on plans by City Studios dated 4/4/2025. Approve a locational variance to provide a setback on Liberty Street where the building is required to be built to the corner. Approve a locational variance to provide parking in the side yard. Approve a special exception of 1 foot for interior parking buffer area of 2 feet at the south property line. Approve a special exception of 12 feet for parking lot islands, providing 3 to 5 feet of separation. All the zoning relief is the same as it was at the previous hearing. And staff also recommends approval of a certificate of appropriateness for 1426 to 1450 Walnut Street with the conditions that the specific window series for the rehabilitation of the historic buildings shall be submitted to the urban conservator for approval prior to the issuance of building permits. Crystal windows are not appropriate on highly visible elevations of existing buildings. And that 2, the building permits must be issued within 2 years of the decision date or the COA shall expire.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. Mr. Kreider, would you like to present the applicant's case?
No.
Instead, the applicant will speak.
Great. Please make sure to identify yourself before you.
Thank you. I'm Kate Green with Urban Sites.
Hi, my name is Will Yockel. I'm the in-house architect at Urban Sites and Director of Development. I served on the Urban Design Review Board in Covington. I want to thank you for your dedication to our city. I know what it's like to get a hearing packet and spend the afternoon reviewing it. It takes a lot of time and energy to be prepared for these hearings. You have my praise and respect for committing to that. This has been a very humbling process. We were very proud of our initial submission, and I'm even more proud of how our team has reacted to your comments and has come up with a revised submission that addresses the 4 major items that were discussed at our last hearing: setback, demolition, height, and scale. I'm going to comment on how we were able to address each item with the changes that were made to our project individually. And Kate is going to discuss how these changes affect our project overall. Doug, can you please turn to page 27 of the drawings submitted by City Studios?
I don't know that I have. Okay, I do have page numbers.
A little further down. Two more, yeah. Yep. Setback, the initial submission was roughly setback 51 feet at the corner of Liberty and Walnut, and we've graciously approached the corner by more than half with a revised submission that is roughly setback 22 feet at the corner. A purist might say this has to be a 0-foot setback. We're taking a more contextual approach. The south side of Liberty has a story to tell, which is still very evident today. To rewrite that winding wrong would erase a 7-block, 75-year story of place. The winding was planned in 1942 and executed in the 1950s. Over the Rhine, unlike the West End, was lucky to remain predominantly intact through urban renewal efforts. And as a result, the south side of Liberty has truly become a unique location in the district. Context is important as we design new construction. New construction hasn't been built on the south side of Liberty in almost 40 years. Crossroad Health Center at 1518 Vine was built in 1988, and Comey and Shepherd at 1440 Main was built in 1957. Neither have a 0-foot setback at the corner. More importantly, none of the contributing buildings that remain visible on the south side of Liberty have a 0-foot setback to the right of way either. Many of the open lots between will remain as they're too small to develop. The contributing buildings will continue to stair step along the streetscape. We strongly feel our approach is more sensitive to the context of story and place in the neighborhood than a 0-foot setback, which would elevate the importance of the new construction among the remaining contributing buildings and make it feel out of place. Instead of a fenced-in private amenity patio at the corner, we've relocated the building entry to the corner with an open plaza and landscaping to make the corner welcoming and active. We looked at numerous alternate options the week following our last hearing. Several options solved for 1 or 2 of the 4 items, but this option, I call it the zigzag, really started to solve for all the items together. As we pushed the corner of the building further out to address the setback, it started to give relief and opportunities to address the remaining items: demolition, height, and scale. Now, can you move up to page 22? Demolition. The initial submission demolished the rear 2/3 of Grammer's at 1440 Walnut, and the revised submission keeps the rear third of 1440 Walnut and alters the middle third. The resulting zigzag provides additional space to keep the rear third of 1440 Walnut exposed on all 3 sides and adds a courtyard at the rear entrance to the new building. The initial submission would have lost 3 dwelling units had the rear third of 1440 Walnut remained, because it would have been engaged with both wings of the new building, but the revised submission solves that with additional space the zigzag provides. The front third of 1440 Walnut will be preserved as a bar on the first floor and a 1-bedroom dwelling unit on the second floor, and the rear third of 1440 Walnut will be preserved and adaptively reused as a 2-bedroom dwelling unit on both the first and second floors. Everything that was historically visible from the most significant front street facade to the less significant rear alley facade will remain and be preserved as a result of this project. The alteration of the middle third of 1440 Walnut is necessary for an economically viable project. If the middle third of 1440 Walnut remained, a steel structure with new foundations would have to be built around the building to support the new construction above at an additional cost of $701,650 to the project. This loss of value reduces the project returns to 8.52% cash on cash over 10 years. The 8.52% return is not sufficient to attract investors. Therefore, keeping the middle third of 1440 Walnut creates an economic hardship in which the project can no longer be economically viable. If you go to page 20. Height, as we all know, Grammer's at 1440 Walnut is a 3-story contributing building. The initial submission stepped up from 1440 Walnut at 3 stories to new construction at 5 stories, varying 2 stories. And the revised submission steps up from 1440 Walnut 3 stories to new construction at 4 stories, varying 1 story. The resulting zigzag provides additional space between 1440 Walnut and the northern wing to reduce the step up to new construction. 1426 Walnut, the southernmost contributing building in our project, is a 4-story building. There is a residential dwelling unit proposed in this building on the 4th floor. Urban Sites is currently renovating 1439 and 1443 Walnut across the street, to which I'm the architect of record. These also are both 4-story contributing buildings with residential dwelling units on the 4th floor. The southern wing at 4 stories varies 1 story from 1440 Walnut, and the northern wing at 5 stories varies 1 story from 1426 Walnut and other adjacent contributing buildings like 1439 and 1443 Walnut across the street, and among others along Walnut between 14th and Liberty. Lastly, can you go to page 18? Scale. The initial submission had a long 215-foot wide north elevation along Liberty, and the revised submission breaks that into 2 separate shorter massings, a 90-foot wide elevation that was pushed 30 feet closer to the corner, and a 125-foot wide elevation that remained in the same plane and terminates at the east end of the site with a 0-foot setback. The first, more prominent massing at the corner is designed to be more commercial in nature with the open plaza, building entry, and larger window openings, and the second, less prominent massing is designed to be more residential in nature with smaller, more traditional punched window openings. The resulting zigzag reduces the scale along Liberty into parts that help make it feel more in relation to its surroundings. Contributing buildings 1435 Main has a 100-foot wide elevation to Liberty, 1512 Moore, 75 feet wide at Liberty, 1531 Vine is 90, 1537 Republic is 75, and 1538 Race is 85. As you travel down Liberty and notice the stair stepping of the contributing buildings, our approach to scale is sensitive to the context of story and place along Liberty within the neighborhood. Thank you again to the board for your dedication to this process and for giving us a chance to make these revisions that address the 4 major items that were discussed at our last hearing: setback, demolition, height, and scale. We hope that you agree the revised submission is successful in addressing these items and vote to approve our certificate of appropriateness and zoning relief. Kate is going to take a moment to discuss how these changes have affected our project overall.
Thanks, Will. I do want to note that in addition to Will and myself, we have City Studios, our architects in the room. We also have Mel Gravely, our partner at Triversity, and Ken, as you noted, as legal counsel. So you'll likely hear from all of us at some point today, but just wanted to make sure that you knew we were all here. I want to echo Will's remarks on thanking you all for your service today, and thank you to Emily and Doug for your work in reviewing our project. We really appreciate it. We're really proud of the project outlined in front of you today. As I think I may have mentioned this 2 months ago when we were here last, that we've been working in some capacity on this site for almost 2 decades. And the site comes with a lot of complexities and a lot of challenges, and it's seen several concepts. And so to be this far along is really exciting for our team. At Urban Sites, we pride ourselves on being a great neighbor. We are a long-term holder, which gives us a different perspective and informs our approach a little bit differently than other potential developers. We manage 118 properties in the region, and the majority of those are right within this area and over the Rhine. We currently have 12 buildings on this block. Will mentioned a few of them that in the surrounding area that are under construction or just recently completed in the last few months. With the Lockhart, these projects represent $48 million in investment to this area from our team. These represent a great deal of risk for our company, our ownership group, and our investors, but it's something that we're super passionate about, and we believe in it. We believe in Cincinnati, and we believe in Over the Line, and we've been here since 1990 doing this work, and so this is just a big milestone for us. As you can tell in the packet from the 53 letters of support we've received from the Over the Line residents, very many small business owners, stakeholders, the Over the Rhine Community Council, other property owners. Our work is welcomed and embraced by the neighborhood. Our projects create safe and beautiful places for people to call home. This project included. They support surrounding businesses, they alleviate safety concerns, they fill in gaps in the streetscape, and they address regional housing and economic development goals. As you heard Will outline in detail, our team has very thoughtfully pivoted and addressed the concerns that you all shared with us at the previous hearing. We went through multiple iterations. I think it was 7 different designs and concepts that we've been through in the past 2 months to get to this point. And each new concept presented new hurdles and complexities, certainly from a financial perspective, but also from a design and construction perspective. The new design in front of you today incorporates your feedback while giving us the greatest fighting chance to move forward. The previous design penciled financially, and I think we've mentioned that, when we were here last, we had a project that we knew we could bring to life. As Doug mentioned and as Will mentioned, the new design in front of you has increased our total development cost by $3 million. And while it adds 10 more residential units, that does offset some of the additional cost. The cost per unit has increased, and it has left us with a new gap of $1.4 million. In the past few weeks, we've solved for about half of that gap, and we are really hopeful that we will be able to solve for the rest of it. And so to get to a point where we can attract investors, we are working to identify final $700,000 to bring this project to life. And it's something we're actively pursuing, and we feel really confident that we'll be able to achieve. And we're very hopeful that will bring a solution to bring this project across the finish line in this form. The final thing I just wanted to share is that we do love this new design. We respect the process. We're here in a spirit of collaboration. We think that everyone who sits here today on both sides really feel they're here for Cincinnati, and we're here for Cincinnati too, and so we respect that. And we have the highest hopes that we can bring this 20-year dream into fruition. So we will be available to answer any questions you have, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts on the new design.
Are there any other members of the applicant team that would like to speak, or is everyone else here just to answer questions? Just to answer questions. Any questions for the applicants or the staff before I go to public comment?
Just clarification, what did you say was 300 you needed?
700.
700. Yeah, and just out of curiosity, you've been working on it for 2 decades. I can relate back to my former life. What caused you to start it again this last time?
It happened before I joined.
I started working on this around 5 years ago after the property was held up in a divorce resolution, and I started again on that after.
I think the other thing too is that although in previous iterations it might not have penciled, the city has really embraced supporting projects. So as you know, this project relies pretty heavily on city subsidy. We're receiving $2.9 million from the city to bring it to life. And that wasn't always the case. Those TIF fundings, didn't always exist. And so that really does make a big difference in us being able to bring it.
Other questions right now before public comment? Daniel Jones, are you here?
No, I don't need to speak. I'm just city staff from ECD.
Got it. Danny Klingler?
Madam Chair, are we allowed to speak as a party of record still?
We'll allow that.
We won't be long.
More than 2 minutes.
It might be more than 2. Thank you, members of the board, for being here today and for listening to us so earnestly 2 months ago. And with me, I'm Danny Klingler. With me here today is Frank Russell, president of the Over the Rhine Foundation. We're basically here. You received our letter in the packet. We wanted to just give you brief thoughts on why we wrote that letter. And yeah, and then mention where we go from here. So I think staff has already laid out the changes that we also noted. The areas of substantial concessions that were very notable, and from the preservation of part of the Grammars building to reduction of the setback to the stepping down of the building next to Grammars to breaking up the volumes on Liberty Street. It didn't get all the way to where we wanted. However, we felt that in the spirit of acknowledging the concessions that had been made, that the best thing to do was to withdraw our objection to the project as it is now proposed. One further thing we noticed in the revised application is that the applicant has withdrawn one of the 2 demolition arguments, the one about the rear of the building being non-significant. And so that makes a big difference to, not having to worry about that precedent being set. The remaining argument is the economic hardship argument for demolition. So make the loss of part of that building a little bit easier to swallow. A couple of points to note on that historic Grammars building. I did consult with Don Heinrich Toltzman in between the 2 hearings, and some of you may know Don is the author of a couple of books on Over the Rhine, one called Over the Rhine Tour Guide, and is the president of the German American Cincinnatians League. Coincidentally, 2 weeks after the hearing in February, he was on the schedule for Bachfest, giving a presentation at, I believe, at Moorline Lager House, and it was on Grammars, the whole presentation. So I wasn't able to attend that, but I followed up with him about how he saw this new proposal. And what I learned about those, the front and the rear buildings is the front building originally was men only prior to Prohibition, and the rear building was women and children only. And so that was the space for women and children. He agreed that the middle section was the least significant and the least detrimental to be torn down. He indicated an interest in being consulted in the renovation if the applicant would allow that moving forward to ensure that certain interior elements are preserved. And then lastly, and then the rear building after Prohibition just became the dining hall and the meeting areas. I did want to just correct one thing that was mentioned by Mr. Yokel, that the middle section is the only thing now being demolished. It's not quite true. It's the middle section and the first part of the rear section. So it's more like, I wouldn't call it the rear third that's being preserved, but maybe the rear 20%. So let's see. Trying to think. Yeah, so we're grateful for the changes that have been proposed. We're grateful for you guys for listening. We are withdrawing our opposition, and yet still want to note that we feel there's several areas in which the project does not meet the guidelines or the zoning. And while we are withdrawing our opposition, we recognize that the board may have further changes or improvements that it would like to enforce. And we certainly wouldn't object to that. And yeah, so before I turn it over to Frank Russell for a few brief comments, just want to say that we appreciate that the project, that this process has led to improvement that our group can live with, and hopefully a better project for the district and for everyone. I know the thing I forgot to say. While we feel that it would be better to build the building all the way to the corner, we recognize that there's an argument to be made, and some may want to preserve that orientational precedent that's now been set. And obviously, a majority of this board may feel that way. And so definitely think it's good that a storefront is there now as opposed to a fenced-in courtyard at the corner. So with that said, I won't keep you any longer other than to, again, thank you for, your position you took 2 months ago. It's greatly appreciated, and we're here to answer any questions.
My comments are a bit more global, and moving forward from this, how do we function in the future? So take these comments in that light. Since I and our group opposed the original proposal, I suppose I should be relieved with the revisions. But instead, I'm just worried. I'm confused by the time and energy spent on this. Think of it, the architects, 2 lawyers, 50 or more people writing and speaking in more than a few hours of your time. If only the guidelines and the zoning could have been followed more closely in the beginning, everyone would have avoided this. I sure want to put the blame on the developer, but they're doing their job to maximize the return if they can. I'd love to blame the architects, but they're obliged to meet the client's directive. I get it that some things are worth fighting for, but both architects and developer, I think, were relying on the advice of staff. And we know that the designers consulted and maybe even had assurances from the staff in advance of the staff report. So I'm concerned about that. I worry that the staff justified the depth, as an example, the depth of the proposal's original setback based on mid-century removals along Liberty Street. I expect a conservator to push for restoring the urban fabric, not perpetuate patterns of destruction. I worry that the staff misinterpreted the guideline height restrictions on Walnut, where the new development would touch Grammars. The guidelines are so clear on that, 1 story above adjacent or use the context hierarchy. They're very clear. By the way, if you don't already know, I could take another hour or 2 of your time discussing why adjacent is the only word missing from the glossary and how to fix that. So feel free to ask me later. I worry that the staff is making too many concessions like this to developers, and I'm grateful for your courage in pushing back. When we have clear guidelines, why do concessions need to be made? If staff isn't fighting administrative pressure from above, you should know that. Let the department heads be here and testify and take that load off of them. But I worry the most that the staff's interpretation of the guidelines can be so different than yours. Your decision, the decision of 5 independent experts at the last hearing, was unanimous in rejecting staff recommendations. That means something. We all risk getting blindsided if staff's advice to applicants remains questionable, and that should be a concern for everybody.
That's all.
I don't believe I have anyone else signed up as public commenters on this item. I was going to ask if there was anyone else who wanted to speak. Please come forward, identify yourself. And then we will observe the 2-minute Whoever would like to go first, I'll leave that up to you. Oh, great.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, whoever would like to go first. Come forward, identify yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, everyone. My name is Myra Greenberg. I live at 1324 Broadway. I'm about 2.5 blocks from this on Clay Street. The first place I would meet that would be Clay Street. There are several large areas in Pendleton and in Over the Rhine. So this is important to get this right so that it doesn't come back and bite us over and over and over. A couple of things I would like to mention, and I agree with the global issues that were just laid out, but this is a highly localized one, and it's the dog park, dog green thing on Liberty. I think that if that were approved, that's approving a nuisance, a blight, because nothing will stay green with a whole bunch of dogs being there over and over every day. Dog urine carries bacteria and that smells really bad. And in the heat and humidity, that will go up to everybody who has to live on that side of the building. Plus, Liberty Street is a pollution sewer. Pollution is extreme, especially PM2.5. That's particulate matter 2.5. It's so small you cannot expel it from your lungs. And that's one of the reasons so many of our children at Rothenberg suffer from asthma, other reasons but that. So this type of dog thing on green plastic, there will be no turf, but on green plastic's even worse. So I would suggest putting the dog walker place somewhere in another part of this very large, flat, buildable site. And actually, I wish that they had built more housing on the Clay Street side, 2 stories. Could have done that. I'm not a bit happy about dismantling Grammars. Now it's going to be Grimlet, Grim Acres. So I just want to say that if you want to respect Over the Rhine, respect the guidelines, comply with them. So thank you very much for your decisions in February, and I do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I have Mr. Walter and Mr. Hassey signed up, so whoever would like to come forward next. Please identify yourself.
I'm John Walter. I've been a resident and a business owner in Over the Rhine since 1981. Been involved in the community council on and off. I'm a board member now. The community council did support this project. I just wanted to say something about Urban Sites. I met one of the co-owners of Urban Sites in the 90s, and I met him. I was walking down Main Street, and here he's out as a co-owner of an organization. Didn't have to be there on a Sunday, kind of trying to get people to come in and see the new product. You know, he's marketing the product, and that I've just had unbelievable respect for Urban Sites. They're a bedrock of the community. I think we need to encourage the local developers to do more in Over the Rhine. Over the Rhine's kind of a tale of 2 cities. I walk it every day, 7 days a week, pretty much from end to end. During the week, it's vacant. A lot of times, even when the weather's cold and all, you don't even feel safe walking. The businesses are just, you know, the people working in the businesses are looking out, you know, hoping you come in and do some business with them. Weekends, it's different. That's the other tale. But businesses can't survive. I mean, like that. That's why it's kind of a rotating kind of thing, these storefronts and all the vacant storefronts. We need population. Over the Rhine is totally underpopulated. The city is too. And these guidelines, I mean, I totally respect that, you know, you need guidelines, historic guidelines to maintain the integrity of the historic integrity of Over the Rhine and all. But to nitpick about, you know, stop a $30 million development, you know, I think it's been improved. That's great. But from here on and other developments, I think there, you know, the economics of it have to be looked at also. And what it does to people, what it does to employees, what it does to our tax base and everything. So I hope you guys approve. Thanks.
Mr. Hassey? I'm not sure, have you been sworn in? Have you been sworn in by? If you could be sworn in?
Just raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, what would you like to tell us?
I am President of the Rhine Community Council, and I am simply reinforcing a correspondence that I believe you already have. That is quite short and simple. That says, the Over the Rhine Community Council voted to send a letter of support to the city regarding the Urban Sites Grammars project at Walnut and Liberty in Over the Rhine. Urban Sites has shared details 5 different times recently with the Over the Rhine and public forums on the project. The Urban Sites motion at the Over the Rhine Community Council passed by a margin of 33 yes, 10 no, and 0 abstentions. That's the only message that I am reinforcing. And then on a personal note, I would just say that I am an advocate for housing for all, be it more income, less income. I think everybody needs to get housing. That's it. Thank you very much for your time.
I think that is everyone. Is there anyone else hoping to speak today? Questions or comments from the board?
I'd like to make a comment on some of the testimony. I think it's important to understand that there's a reason why we are here, and that there are guidelines. And the first half of that word is the important part of the word. It is to guide you. It is not written in stone. That is why we are here. And that is why the Urban Conservator looks at these things and makes recommendations to us. And his input is invaluable. And I felt he was somewhat smirched. And I wanted to mention that. The other thing I'd like to say is, I think what happened here today is exactly what should happen. The developers came in with a plan, we rejected it. We told them why. And they made a lot of really good, solid changes. So we think we have a much better project there than we would have. And that's why we're here. Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
It's still too big for me. And even you did the step, and I understand that, but it just still seems for me just overwhelming. So I can imagine I will vote to approve, but with hesitation.
I would say that one of the key concerns from my end was how it met the streets. And while ideally, if when you build a good street corridor, you do want to have those buildings up to the street to really kind of create that canyon effect and help facilitate pedestrian safety and slow cars down. However, I do realize that the site has constraints, and I do think that what was proposed today meets the letter and the intent of the comments that we had months ago, and is vastly superior to what was presented a few months ago. So very supportive of this.
Just a few quick comments. I certainly can understand the frustration that may have been here on the part of all parties. Coming to a meeting 2 months ago, having a staff recommendation to proceed, and that not being the outcome. So I can understand the points that Mr. Russell was taken. I do not fault Mr. Owen for that, but I agree that sets us up for a contentious process that may be frustrating for people. I can't claim that I have the answers to that, but point. I applaud the architects and the developer for taking our feedback seriously. And while I'm certain that there are some things that many of us would do differently given unlimited funds, we know that that is not the case on this or really any project. So I am also in support of the changes that were made. While not perfect, I think that they are a vast improvement over what we saw last time. And again, I appreciate the collaborative nature that was at play in making those revisions. So any other questions or comments from the board at this point? Not, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the zoning relief for 1426, 1450 Walnut Street and the certificate of appropriateness is laid out by staff.
Second.
Call the roll. Mr. Zalesko.
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Sunderman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Chair also votes aye. Hope you are successful in finding that last bit of funding. Good luck on the project. I think we are all looking forward to seeing that corner. We have staff approval yet on the agenda. Are there any questions on the March staff approvals? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the staff approval for March.
Thank you.
Second.
A motion and a second. Call the roll. Mr. Zalesko.
Aye.
Robbins. Mr. Sunderman.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. If there is no further business, I will entertain a motion on adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Pick which one.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.